All right. Okay. All right. So I'd completely forgotten about this. So let me see. How about the chat? Let's see. All right. Oh, there we go. All right, much better. Hey, how's it going, Kinetic Witch? Let me see. So let me invite the usual suspects. And copy, paste. There we go. All right. Okay. All right. So now invitations have been posted. Oh, I will be right back. Sorry. Hold on. All right. There we go. Okay. Now I'm back. All right. So I don't know. I don't know what to have for a topic. So I guess I'll answer questions from people. I guess that'll work. I completely forgot about this. I usually have it at 6 p.m. and shit, lost connection. And so I started it now. So let's go for fake witches. Is that a topic or just a statement? I don't know. I think it's funny. I mean, if I don't know what I think about fake witches, I think it's one of those things that it's one of those terms that could be abused. I think that people should identify with what they are, you know. And I think maybe people just don't really know what they are, and so they take on a certain label, but that's not really who they are. So I think that's where the whole fake witches thing comes in, is that somebody takes on a label that, well, isn't exactly who they really are. And I think that that happens more often than not. And one thing I also was kind of trying to say last time, and I sort of backed off from it, and really didn't address. But you know, with especially with the Dorian Virtue situation that happened, and you know, going over, you know, debunking Bill Schnoebelen and some of the other people, you know, those people who are sort of on the fence about witchcraft, and they also claim to practice Christianity or Catholicism. I don't know how committed they are. I'm just going to be brutally honest about it, and I'm just gonna put my foot down even harder and just really stabilize it, because I really really question it. I don't think people are serious, and I'm sure people are going to be offended by that and all that, and you know, I really don't care anymore. I think that it's just, you know, it's shit or get off the pot. That's how I feel about it. If you want to go against your Bible and claim to be a witch, then, well, that's up to you. but I'm most of everything that comes out of your mouth, I'm really going to question. I think that you're really not committing yourself to anything. I think you're playing around, you're farting around, you're not really doing anything serious. And that's just my personal opinion about it. And I've really come to that conclusion with experiencing a lot of these people who claim to be a witch, and later on they're not. Surprise, surprise, surprise. You know, um, and I think that there's just enough evidence out there for it. Let me say, hey, Animist. Hey, how's it going, Mary? So, Mary, I sent you an invite, and I also sent you an invite, Animist, through through the email. So check it out. See if it's in there. Now, there are a lot of people, I understand, who what they do is they use like Christian folk magic in their tradition, and they'll like read psalms and whatever. I mean, yeah. Hey, if that really if 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 talking if saying a psalm from the Bible helps you produce magic in any way whatsoever, that's fantastic. That's working for you. But I think you should understand that you're using an element from Christianity. Um, I don't think you're necessarily a Christian for doing that. You're just using it. It's kind of like us. We use Hindu symbolism or we use Hindu gods. We're basically using that, but we're not Hindus. We're not. That's just it's a whole label thing again. If you're going to recite a psalm while you burn a picture of your ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend or whatever, you're using a psalm in that. That's what you're doing. It doesn't make you a Christian slash witch or a Christian and a witch. It makes you a witch who is using a psalm from the Bible. That's all it is. And looking back in history, I mean, it's just these two kids have not played well in the playground together. Christians and pagans just do not play well together. It's just history is a great, great example of that. Let me see. I think Doreen wasn't being true to herself. The whole New Age princess persona was a farce. Now we are seeing what she. Yeah, I agree with you, Mary. But I think it's also I think that people like Doreen Virtue, who kind of like they played around with this sort of New Age thing, and they took little elements from this and that. I don't know. To me, it's kind of it doesn't seem like she was ever really serious about it. I think she was just interested in making money, and I think that's what the whole thing is there. It's all about making money, and it's the same thing with Bill Schnoebelen. He he talks about these things, and he's taken these oaths. He's taken an oath, when he was initiated in 1973 in a coven in Boston by people whose names I just can't reveal. And he also took oaths in Freemasons, and he broke them. I mean, the reason why he was able to break them is because he wasn't serious. He was not 100% committed to the oaths that he was taking. And that speaks to not only his character, but the way that he approached his practice. And I feel it's the same way with a lot of people today who are just kind of bouncing around to various things. I don't think they're committed. And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to commit to anything, but be honest with yourself. Don't take an oath, don't take a commitment unless you're serious about it. And if you just kind of want to fart around the buffet table and take a little taste of everything, then do that. But be honest and say, hey, I'm just looking around. I'm just exploring the menu here. That's all I'm doing. And, And there's nothing wrong with that. But later on, when you decide that, oh, you know what, I'm not going to eat that anymore, I'm going to eat this, and then you know, it's just, it's going to save a lot of trouble if you just are honest with yourself. But also, maybe I also don't think people really understand. I think they're just kind of, they're really, I mean, they're really just playing around. They're just acting. They're just doing stuff. They're not really committed to it. If you're committed to it, you're committed to it. Let me see. New age people are their own thing. Yeah, that's true. Exactly. New age people are their own thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the new age movement. I mean, I'm definitely not very excited about it, but there's a lot of people who enjoy it. I found my past, still have not taken an oath. Yeah, I mean, if and that's okay. I think if you're one of those people who just likes to bounce around, there's also nothing wrong with that. I mean, being eclectic to the extreme, like being eclectic with the religions, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, you know. But to just mislabel yourself and take on something, like if I suddenly you know came on YouTube and started claiming to be you know a voodoo priest, or what else could I be? I could be like a Rastafarian or whatever. Am I really a voodoo priest? Am I really a Rastafarian, or am I just like appropriating or taking on certain elements of it? Just because I take on certain elements of, let's say, Rastafarian practice doesn't make me a Rastafarian. you know and that's just being honest. That's being honest with myself. And there's people out there who have studied and taken a great deal of pride in dedicating their life to their practice, and then to have somebody come along and claim that title is kind of presumptuous. It's kind of like, you're calling yourself that, and why are you exactly calling yourself that? Oh, you read a couple of books. Okay. Yeah. I don't think so. So anyhow, I think it's just kind of, I think I don't really like to uh, spread, not really necessarily fear, because I don't think it's fearful, but I think we should be a little hesitant about people who are just kind of not really, maybe they're not exactly serious. I mean, obviously give them the benefit of the doubt. I think we should definitely give people the benefit of the doubt until they absolutely stab us in the back. But, people, we should be hesitant, especially maybe if we're going to be shelling out money or getting certificates from them, or really putting too much of an investment in, like maybe, I don't know. I think just be cautious. I think maybe tread with caution would be the best way to say it, because I don't want to, you know, mistrust to spread, because I think that mistrust is even worse than being betrayed. You know, I think that we should allow ourselves to be trusting in other people until they absolutely, stab us in the back and prove otherwise. Let me see. Checking email. Yeah, let me know, Animist, what happens. Um, yeah, and I don't think Mary says I like to learn about different paths. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't. I hope nobody's taking it that I think that being eclectic is bad at all. I don't think it. I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's very good. And sometimes we just go around. Maybe we don't know exactly what we're looking for, or maybe we're sort of molding and shaping our own practice. There's nothing wrong with that. My concern is people where they sort of just kind of like adapt or take on a label without really maybe completely understanding what it is and what it actually means. Your emails still don't reach me, but I figured out where the Twitter invites go. Okay. What I'll do, Animist, is I will send it to your I will tweet you the link, Animist. So let me see. Okay. So Animus, just give my computer a second. You know, I really want to use Firefox, but Firefox sucks. So let me tweet. Actually, I can't tweet you out. I have to send you a message. Okay, that's not working. So just give me a second, Animus, and I will tweet it to you. In the meantime, while this starts up. Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. So I just tweeted you the link, Animist. And let's see, what do we got going on here? Okay. Let me get the whole culture posted personally. And oh, Mary, if you want to join, I also sent you the link too in your email. You might want to check your email. If that is, if you want to join, you're welcome to join. So yeah, I mean, I think my own personal biases set aside, I think that we should just sort of, you know, just maybe be a little cautious with some people who maybe aren't exactly too serious, you know, or maybe, you know, I mean, I don't know. I remember seeing Dorian Virtue's books, and she even had, I think she had an Angel Oracle deck or something, and you know, I just remember seeing it, just going, something not right about that. She's not 100% committed, and you know, I don't know. I always trust my instincts, and for those of you out there, I always say trust your instincts too. Hey, how's it going, Animist?
Okay, I think I'm hooked up right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. So
Okay,
now,
good.
did you get this link through email or did you get it through Twitter?
It comes through as a message on Twitter.
Oh, okay, good.
And
Okay.
I found the message folder on Twitter whenever I actually to connect with you without you putting it in the live feed last week, and it seems to go there pretty quickly.
Okay. So what is up with the emails? You look in your email and there's nothing?
Yeah, they just don't
Wow,
show
that's
up.
weird.
I'm wondering if maybe you don't have the right spelling or something, although I don't know.
Well, yeah, let me double check. Let me see. I don't want to give your email out, but let me
Well,
see.
there's the spelling. So you can look and see if that spelling matches what you have. I don't know what you could possibly spell slightly different than that. That would actually go somewhere and not tell you it wasn't found.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I have the one at Yahoo.
Ah, that's the one.
That's the one. Okay.
Yeah, and your emails, they're not in my spam folder. They don't show up in my inbox.
So
Nothing.
what I'll do, Animist, is the chat. Excuse me. Whoops. The chat is personal between the two of us. So let me put not the chat.
I don't really. It doesn't bother me if the people in this group happen to know my name.
Okay,
that doesn't bother me. If somebody wants to send me an email, they can. I don't care.
Okay, all right. So that's the email address that I have. Does that look right?
What did you do?
Okay, so I put it. I put it in the chat where we are. Do you see it?
Chat where we are.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're saying.
That's okay. Are you on a phone or a computer?
I'm on a computer.
Okay.
And I see on one screen I have the YouTube, which I have muted, but I've got the chat for this talk. Mm-hmm. And on the other screen, I've got the hangouts.google.com, and all that shows is the icons.
Okay. So you
show any text at all.
Sure, no problem. If you go over to the left-hand side, there's a little blue icon in the very upper left-hand corner.
Yeah,
I click it.
That. Yeah. Okay, let me double check the spelling of my own name because it's a Swiss mess.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that looks right, man. That looks right.
Okay.
For
Well, I don't
whatever
know what's
reason.
going on. Maybe you
Yeah.
have me blocked or something.
No,
Or
you know,
what about your junk mail?
junk
Oh,
mail.
yes.
I know about spam and I know about stuff that comes to my inbox. I don't know
Well, I
about.
mean, that's what I mean. Check your, some people call it junk mail or spam folder.
Yeah, I check it every time, and your stuff does not go into. It just doesn't show up. It just literally does not show up for whatever reason. I mean, the internet hates us. What can we say?
Yeah, all right. So what I'll do, Animus, next time is I'll just tweet it to you.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
So
in the sort of main feed of tweet, it shows a link to back to the YouTube thing, but then I get a little one in the messages, and that's got the link to join the chat.
okay.
So that's I don't tweet. I don't tweet. I only even got a Twitter account so that I could get the invite from you.
Twat, you don't tweet?
Tweets, whatever. I don't twit.
You don't tweet. Twat? Twat,
Yeah,
you don't
it's
tweet?
funny because I get the notification, once a month from Patreon, but that's it. Your personal emails. If you've been sending me any, I didn't get them.
Well,
so, whatever.
Yeah. So what it is actually it would come from I don't know. Whatever. I'll just stop sending you emails through that. I'll just
maybe someday
tweet
I'll
you.
send you one, and maybe you can respond to it, and it'll make the correlation somehow.
Well, yeah, but what it is that I'm actually inviting you via Google Plus.
Oh God.
So
I
I'm
never
not
even tried
sending
to
you
sort
a
that out.
personal email.
Oh, I never tried to sort out Google Plus. It's a disaster.
Okay.
I got an account with that because I had to in order to be on YouTube, and I don't even go to it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I know.
Emma Blackery really did the definitive statement on Google Plus.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way pretty much. Hey, how's it going, Mary?
Mary. And hi, Ambrosia.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Woohoo!
Yeah, you're coming through good.
Yeah.
I'm on my laptop.
Oh, okay. Good.
Nice. We finally got something other than two dudes talking.
Yeah, really. Exactly.
As much fun as our dialogues are.
And I saw that cloak. Actually, I saw your website too, but I saw that cloak you made in midnight blue.
Yes.
I really like that.
Oh, thank you.
What kind of material do you make the cloaks out of?
It's a fairly heavy twill, so a little heavier than a shirt material.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty sturdy, not quite denim, kind of in between, a shirt and pants kind of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's that autumn cloth, yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice sturdy black twill. I can do them in navy, green, black, brown, bunch of colors.
I might, yeah, because I was looking at that because I have a black cloak that is made out of oh shoot, I don't know. But it's kind of a heavy, like it's a heavy cloak. I mean, it's like it goes all the way down to pretty much a little bit below my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
Almost drags on the ground. But it's black. So I might get like a green cloak.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
Yeah. So,
like an army green kind of color?
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, maybe.
Okay.
But it'll be a little bit before I actually get one. But if I do,
okay,
I'll check out. I'm gonna check out your website. I had a chance to kind of peruse it a little bit. I just saw like the home page of it.
Well, thanks for looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just built that website. I've been on Etsy for a long time, but I decided to make myself a proper website.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Nice. And then, but how's do you have like a shopping cart from your website, or do you have to go through another agency for that?
No, it's got a shopping cart, and you go through PayPal
Okay.
Today I ordered the square or a square. So that's coming as well. So I think I can set that up on there as well. And then Etsy takes all credit cards and PayPal and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
yeah, either one. Let me know. So I'll give you a friend's discount.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Definitely. Not this month, but maybe we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. But
Okay.
it'll probably be a month or two before I do it.
Okay.
But definitely we'll keep a. So Animist and I have been talking about like spirits and what happens after we die, and theories
Oh.
about that, and other things. But since this is your first time being in the Patreon hangout, do you have a topic you think would be interesting to discuss?
Well, spirits sounds interesting.
Okay.
I do like that topic. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we've already talked about it a little bit, so why don't you give us your perspective on spirits?
Well, I believe in reincarnation. It wasn't something that I sort of believed in when I was younger, but the more I read and I do research and all that sort of thing, I like to watch a lot of videos about near-death experience and all of that stuff, and hear these people's stories. And the more I hear, the more I believe in reincarnation. So. Yeah, I don't know. I do have a bit of a natural talent as far as mediumship.
Mm-hmm.
It's hit or miss, it usually comes through when I'm reading tarot for somebody. So just because of that,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to believe that, yeah, you can, there's spirits that can communicate from the other side.
Mm-hmm. So now this is interesting because I believe in reincarnation too. That's like my it seems like the most logical conclusion for me for what happens after we die.
Mm-hmm.
But my theory of reincarnation gets a little complex. But how do spirits work in with your concept of reincarnation?
Well, I believe in like a higher soul. So people can still get reincarnated, but you can still speak to their higher soul. If that makes sense? So yeah, because it like kind of like I even believe that they can live several lives at the same time. So they can be living in different time periods, and now and in the future and all of that, and still have a higher soul that is connected to the all, kind of thing.
So a higher soul could simultaneously live at different periods, or
Yeah.
yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because they can, it's not like us where we're linear time and we can only have one life at a time, and that's our only focus. They've got, they can be having, a life in the medieval times and a life now and a life in the future, and all at the same time. Time is all fluid. So.
Interesting. It sounds kind of like Animus can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds sort of like what his concept of it was. He was kind of describing it in kind of esoteric terms, sort of. Because I have a linear concept of time. And it sounds,
okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like maybe you and Animus have a non-linear concept of time. Which is interesting. Did I portray your concept correctly, Animus?
That's a good description from your point of view. I mean, you're inside your life, so you're experiencing moment by moment. I mean, that's how you experience, and appears linear. In shamanic cultures, time is circular, and we went through that with the slinky attempt quite a bit. So I'm not going to try to revisit the slinky
right
now. I think it would make more sense to Mary. But one of the, Yeah, I do very much agree with a lot of what Mary's saying. Is that when you're inside your life, it's kind of like you're inside time, and outside of the line segment of the lifetime of that body, you are. And a higher soul is a good way to put it. You are linked across all of time to everything that you're connected to. And so from a certain point of view, all of your incarnations are connected on a higher soul level is a decent way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So including to each other. And so it's really hard to talk about this stuff without drawing pictures because it makes a lot more sense if I can draw some little pictures. But yeah, if you think about if you had, let's just say 10 lives and they were scattered across history, anywhere that you're not inside one of those lives, you're basically outside of time itself. And so you can connect to anywhere. And so if you can use your magic, get a little bit outside of time, you could connect to any of those other lives. And some of them are going to be before your current life. Some of them are going to be after.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the best explanation for Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay. And then Mary, you also mentioned, so you were saying sort of like a greater soul or a higher soul. So does that mean that you have a concept of like another element of the soul?
Yeah, I believe that we sort of fragment into different personalities, into, our different lifetimes will have a different personality, but then they're all connected to a higher soul.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, how they say your soul type? That would be your higher soul. I don't know, like a sage or something like that. Mm-hmm. So like for witches, right? So a sage or something like that, where each lifetime you're going to be a variation of an occultist or a witch or, something in that field. Mm-hmm. So like you're always going to be attracted to that every lifetime. And if you're lucky enough, you can tap into some of that knowledge,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you put the same essence energy into different experiences and different frames of reference, it's going to turn out a little different each time, but it's also going to have some core similarities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so so if you had a soul that was existing at different time periods, like let's say for simplicity's sake, let's say the 5th century, the 10th century, the 15th century, 20th century, and then the 25th century. Just say there's 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And also correct me if I'm not getting your concept of it right. So your soul could simultaneously exist in each one of those centuries. What would it have knowledge of each one of those centuries, or would it have access to knowledge of those centuries?
That's right. Okay. So you, living in this lifetime, should be able to connect to your higher soul. That's what they say, happens in meditation. If you can connect to the fragments of the other fragments, the other personalities in your higher soul, then you get downloads. At least that's the way I understood it. Mm-hmm. I mean, some people are just born with natural talents. I think that pretty much explains that, like my son can play guitar and it's like, well, where did he get that? Mm-hmm. Nobody in our family can play guitar, but he just picked it up and he was a total natural. Mm-hmm. I can make dresses like it's nothing. And I always have been able to do that. Like, did I pick that skill up in a previous lifetime, in a future lifetime? I don't know.
Okay, interesting. So now how does that fit in with reincarnation?
So how do you mean?
Well, okay, so you die and mm-hmm. your soul, what happens to the soul after you die?
So then you reconnect on the other side mm-hmm. To your higher self. Okay. So therefore you can see everything. You can see all the lives. You can see the life that you just left, and know all of knowledge, like being all of the one consciousness. You should be able to know everything. And if you start the next life, it may not necessarily start in linear time, as in like the next lifetime. It could be you go back to medieval times and live a lifetime there.
Okay. Oh, okay.
That also fits with what I've seen or experienced and what's been described about traditional shamanism around the world. Is sometimes you go back and bother your ancestors, and sometimes you go forward and bother your descendants.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure which is more annoying.
Right.
But,
right.
Like I said, it's kind of like the Leonardo da Vinci kind of concept. It's like, this guy's making helicopters for no hundreds. Clearly some information was bleeding back to him from somewhere. So he has these drawings he doesn't know what to do with. I mean, that's just kind of the metaphor for it.
Yeah, but those drawings don't actually look like helicopters. They actually look like the concept of someone understanding aerodynamics, for example, because the design that he created in concept looked like it would work, but realistically it wouldn't work. Or actually, I think they actually tried to create it and it just didn't work.
Yeah, the thing is, you have to, everything that you get it's kind of like divination in a way. Any information you're getting from these other realms goes through the filter of your own ability to understand it. Mm-hmm. So he didn't understand the Bernoulli principle. That wasn't a word that he had. It wasn't an idea that was available for him to play with. So what he really designed was kind of a corkscrew submarine more than anything else. But given the ideas in his brain that he could work with, the basic idea was totally out of time to him. And this is not a specific argument that Leonardo da Vinci was a reverse reincarnation. It's just an interesting example of what happens to people.
Right. Yeah.
He's getting these ideas from apparently the future and trying to understand them in the same way you would understand a tarot reading. And he was pretty good at getting inspired, but he could only filter those concepts through the brain structures or the idea set that he had. And he did that a lot with a lot of things.
Yeah. The problem with that, Animus, is that I see it from a different perspective. I see it from the perspective of somebody who had a fantastic imagination and understood aerodynamics to a certain degree. And so he could conceptualize how a thing would lift off the ground, and that's how he created it. I don't believe that he had insight into the future creation of a helicopter, which looks absolutely nothing like his concept of a machine that would be able to lift off the ground. But it did seem like somebody who had a fantastic imagination, very creative, and was able to visualize things and was able to visualize what it would take for a machine to aerodynamically be able to lift off the ground. You know what I mean? That's how I perceive it.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, if I can just play the label game for just a second,
sure,
and then I'll stop. What is imagination? Imagination is an attempt to remember the future. And some people are better at imagining than others. And this is actually one of those 4 technologies of magic from Martha Beck's talk that I keep telling people to go see. But remembering the future or imagining potential future outcomes is part of the magic. And it's part of the connection to being across time. So.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Animist. I'm good. I feel like that's all I do in these hangouts is I sit here and disagree with you.
That's
I'm
okay.
So sorry. It's my Patreon hangout. I'm sitting here disagreeing.
It's completely fair for you to do that. Like I've said a bunch of times, we're from very different backgrounds with a very different view, on the base level of what's going on around us. And so there's always going to be translation issues, and that's okay because it's a good exercise to try it.
All right. Well, you know what? Maybe what I should do is maybe I should make sure that I understand you first. Okay. So you say imagination is remembering the future? I mean, how did you formulate that?
That's one of the arts that you do. Mary had something going on.
Huh?
What was that?
Oh, I thought Mary was trying to get a sentence in. I don't want to crowd her out.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But feel free to jump right in, Mary, because we'll sit here and we'll just keep rambling on about whatever. But anyhow, go ahead, Animus.
Okay, remembering the future. This is kind of the attitude, and this is another practice that you may not have done, probably haven't done. But one of the traditional things that you do, that you learn in shamanic cultures or as a practitioner, a tracker, a navigator, wayfinder, is you try to remember where you're going to be. And there'll be various options. And you pick the one that is best for your purpose. This is just the way it goes through your brain. And this is an internal experience. And so it's a little bit like divination in that you're interpreting what's in front of you, but it's sort of turned inside out in spirit tracking, because you're looking for the path that is going to take you to the place that you are trying to remember.
Okay. All right.
And
okay. So good. Okay. So I did understand your concept correctly. Okay. So okay. So go ahead, Mary.
So does that have something to do with deja vu? Like, am I following you? Like, as far as like knowing the future?
It's a little bit like, I wouldn't equate it directly to deja vu, because we know what deja vu is, and that's where the part of your brain that remembers gets mixed up with the part of your brain that's currently perceiving. And this can go on for any length of time, and that's a function of the brain just mechanically. But it's a bit like,
okay.
But the experience is a bit like going into a deja vu mindset, and you're literally saying, "Oh, I'm remembering it going this way, or I'm imagining it going this way," and you're literally remembering an outcome, and you're being drawn towards that. It's not entirely a voluntary experience. You're letting yourself be guided by a memory that you haven't had yet.
Okay. So I would conceptualize our ability to imagine things, being able to create something without form. It's like when I conceptualize and I imagine things, I'm actually sort of like creating it in my mind, and then I'm using various tools in front of me to actually make it happen. Like, let's say I'm drawing a picture. First of all, I'm formulating the picture in my mind, and then I'm using my hands to create that. So I wouldn't say that I'm remembering the future. I would say that what I'm doing is I'm using my mind to actually visualize and create.
I was saying that's visualization, right?
Well, yeah, but that's imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the same thing with Leonardo da Vinci. He probably conceptualized how a machine would lift off the ground, and then from there began to visualize it and formulate it, and then began to draw out the diagrams for it. So I don't think I would, every time I imagine something, I don't think that I'm remembering the future. I think I'm actually conceptualizing and visualizing and imagining something. You see what I'm saying, Animus? Uh-oh. Is he still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm still there. I was just fumbling with the mouse.
Oh, okay.
Trying to have, I try to mute myself so you're not hearing every breath I take in between when I actually talk, and it makes me only talk when I should. instead of going, oh yeah, every 3 seconds, Yeah. So it's, I don't want to make this sound good. It's a learned skill, and I don't know if it's something that requires some kind of special talent or if it's something that anybody can learn. It's something that I've done for so long it seems perfectly natural, and that's the way I see it happening. And that's separate from when I'm imagining the design for a boat, or when I'm imagining a story to write, usually, most of the time. But when you're, because this is one of these trance-based techniques, And when you do that, you go a little timeless. And it's not something that I can create English words that will make it make sense to someone who hasn't been in that state. So it may be non-communicatable. But it actually works, and it creates objective results and objective successes in reality that cannot be explained by normal imagination.
Okay, so I could completely understand that aside from imagination. Like I could conceptualize a person going into, say, a trance state or some other form of trance, or maybe even just through meditation, or just maybe even pure imagination, and remembering the future like you were describing it right now. But
that sounds more like
yeah,
divine inspiration.
Yes, hold on. But I would not include that in imagination. I would keep those separate. So I'm sorry, what were you saying, Mary?
So what I'm gathering is it seems like more like divine inspiration, or something that comes to you that you didn't think of on your own. You just kind of get this flash, which is different than visualizing something, because I use visualization all the time. When I worked as a decorator, I used to be able to redo rooms and walls in my head, or when I make a dress, I make it in my head before I even start sewing. So that's definitely visualization, and like I'm thinking of a concrete way to make it. But then there are days where I'll just get images in my head and I have no idea where they're coming from. So that's more of like a light bulb moment, like, oh, I didn't think of that before. And sometimes during meditation, like today, this is going to sound really odd, but I go to this goddess meditation every week. And we have a different goddess every week that we focus on and whatnot. And this week, this is not my normal. My normal is I get like these lovely, journeys of a goddess in the garden, and she gives me this really cryptic message and, whatever. So that's my normal. Today, I got a to-do list from the goddess. She showed me dresses I needed to make, things I needed to make for a show coming up. She told me to get the website done. She told me to go out and get the square. She gave me like this actual to-do list, which was not my normal. And I thought, well, is it just my monkey mind taking over? But then other people were saying that happens to them on occasion as well. That, during a meditation, it's not always the same type of lovely, journeying. Sometimes you get like concrete things you need to work on. And I did ask her, what should I be focusing on? And then she just started sending me images. So that's like more like divine inspiration, because I wasn't thinking of that stuff before that.
Yeah, that's one way. That's one way that you could put it. I call it commune. You can also think of it as communing with timelessness. And the way you test that is if you go and do those things and make those things, do they turn out to have been a good idea? Do they turn out to have been exactly what you needed, or exactly what you could sell, or what somebody would request? And that's how you test that intuition. And to me, that's a perceiving of time flowing in both directions. And if you do it a lot, you get almost as much stuff flowing at you from the future as you have dragging along behind you from the past.
So, all right.
And it's not comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So let's okay. So I came up with the idea of like large time periods, like 500 years, 1,000, 1,500. So let's break it down to like maybe, let's say like a lifetime, one person's lifetime. Let's say like maybe 100 years. So let's say somebody, I can perceive, I don't know if I can exactly conceptualize it at this moment, but I could perceive a the way that one lifetime would definitely have a change and an impact upon the next lifetime. Maybe either through some kind of a war, or maybe some kind of a cure of a disease, or maybe somebody deciding not to have children, or somebody can definitely, everything that, it's kind of like a brick, or a wall of bricks. Each time brick sort of builds upon the other one. So if you are sort of living in this non-linear concept of time, as like that, kind of like that slinky effect you were describing, Animist, and kind of it sounds similar to what Mary was saying, could there not be something that, I'm just wondering if there would be problems, or something might happen where somebody might not, something would change a person's lifetime in the future, but it would also have some kind of an impact in the past or in the present. I don't know if I'm exactly describing this very well.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, circular time can get a bit chaotic on you if you try to follow it in a linear way. It gets a little. What is it called? Hang on a minute. I got to think of a word. Yeah, you've wandered into the land of the Copenhagen interpretation, or the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, where causality and relativity start to bend back on themselves, and it's not pretty territory. And that's the only way I think, that's the way I mainly think of it, and I'm not sure how to put it in more domestic terms. But yes, you can get into that kind of crazy mess. It happens.
Okay. So
people hunt with that. People literally hunt with that dynamic going on, but they don't think about it in terms of theoretical physics.
Okay. Well, let's say I'm living a lifetime presently right now, and I have like maybe a future life that, like, let's say I'm Joe Schmo living in Seattle, but my descendants are all going down a certain line. They come from a particular person. And let's say in this present moment, instead of going left, I go right, or I don't end up marrying so-and-so, or maybe something happens and I prevent somebody from getting into a relationship with a certain person, where what happens is my future self would never become or never be. I'm just wondering how, I mean, that's one of the problems I see with the idea of at least a future life. Now, the past is already built. You can definitely go back to that. However, the future is still being created. Every moment, like right now, we are creating the future.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that work in with this non-linear concept?
And then every moment changes for
Right.
every thought that you like. So every major decision, a timeline splits.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all those possibilities exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Copenhagen interpretation.
That's, yeah.
It really is. And this really bothers even the physicists who have mathematically decided it's the right one. And the answer is, at any given point in any one of those futures, you're the guy living in that one. Now, I think in terms of navigation, in terms of shamanic navigation, you allow what happens is there's little tiny changes, and they kind of erase over and join back together, and there's very negligible contradictions in reality. But yeah, if you have a big difference, then it's like you number 3 is choosing to go to point C, and you number 1 chose to go to point A, or whatever. I mean, each of you are navigating. But both the shamanic arts and the physics say that you really are making multiple possible futures, and something is going to exist in each of them. And if they get different enough from each other, they'll split off and never rejoin. And as the person who is, person number 3, you know, so it's assuming you're not number one, just for the sake of not being too vague. But your personal version is going where you want to go, and you become the person that wants to go there. And so these others are off in their other own little dimensions. And physicists have been trying to work around that since the 1930s, and they keep coming back and going, no, that's actually the solution to the problem, and we don't like it. And so that's just the universe we live in. But at any one moment, your sense of self and your sense of going through your day is perfectly real.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you're getting into quantum mechanics territory there. That.
Yeah, and I try not to, but if you ask these kind of questions, that's where they go.
Yeah. It's well, forgive me, but it's not that complicated. It's not, you know, I mean, we don't have to bring physics and all this stuff into it. I mean, I don't understand physics, but I mean, I just see, I mean, because we were talking about spirits, and we were talking about the soul, and how the concept of, you know, lives, like, you know, you live in the past and maybe even the future too. I'm just wondering how I can understand the past. I mean, the past I don't really have a problem with. You know, I can completely conceptualize that, you know, we've lived past lives. You know, I don't know if I'm 100% on board with that, but it seems to me like the most likely scenario, even though I don't really have any proof for it. But I still have this concept of linear time. And one of the reasons why I have this concept of linear time is that because, like I said, it's sort of like bricks being built upon itself. And you could see like every click of the second hand is another brick. You know, there's nothing I can do about the moment that is just passed, but I can change the next moment that is ahead of me. And also, I don't know what the final completion of the next 6,000 bricks that are ahead of me, you know. So I'm just wondering how, if we have this concept of living a life over and over, or excuse me, not over and over, but the concept of living a life in the future, I'm just trying to understand how that would work. You know, am I making myself clear?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it is a pretty complex.
It is. I think just to, me, I am not a physicist, so I cannot explain it, but I do get the whole concept of, you know, spiral time. Like, you should be able to go forward as well as backward. And, you know, that's when they start talking about jumping timelines. I've seen, you know, a few people on YouTube talking about that. And what I think they're doing is just changing their perception enough that they jump into a different version of themselves. Like, if it's close enough, you know, and they raise their vibration enough, they're going to jump into a different version.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's see. I mean, we can always come back to this, but I'm interested in Mary, how the concept of spirit. Okay, so like Animist and myself, we were talking before about how you know, there's different elements of a spirit, and like, you know, after you die, your spirit you know, goes on, lives another life, or maybe there's a part of it that stays here or whatever. But like, you know how people say that they see spirits or they experience spirits in the here and now. I'm just wondering how that would, or what's your concept of that? I mean, do you think that spirits exist indefinitely here and now, or what's your concept of that, or what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I can tell you what I experience.
Okay.
As far as, like, you know, when I speak to a spirit from the other side. So you can speak to a higher spirit. That would be like, say you wanted to call on like a long lost relative, or somebody you looked up to that has passed away. And when you call on them, you're calling on their higher self or their higher spirit. And they will appear to you as how you would know them. But they will have more knowledge than just that lifetime. So you can ask them all sorts of questions and they can answer them. And it'll be answers that you don't know anything about it. So in that way, it kind of proves to yourself that you're not just talking to yourself. You know, some people argue that you can be talking to your higher self as well, but I don't know. So that's one type. And then there are ghosts that are on this plane, and those are different. Those are like earthbound spirits. And then you have sort of the negative ones that are, I shouldn't say, well, whatever. The negative ones that are like, yeah, like, you know, shadow people. And those spirits that are earthbound can have, you know, their own personalities, just like when they were here on Earth. So they can be mean, they can be nice, you know, it depends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, they can be tricksters, they can be nice, they, you know, it all depends.
And how would that fit in with reincarnation?
Well, I think those people decide to stay
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason. And a lot of them, you know, end up being negative because maybe they had, you know, some sort of bad experience in life. Mm-hmm. That they ended up staying, you know, either for a loved one or maybe they're just stubborn. I don't know. But they stay here on this plane. They don't want to pass on. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason.
They may just be kind of OCD.
Okay.
And then there's another type of spirit. And that's the one that's like an energy. So these are the ones that kind of like they play a scene. Mm-hmm. You can see them doing something over and over and over again. And that's the most common one that I see personally. It's like I see a little movie version of, you know, maybe somebody who lived in the house before. A good one is to go to like a famous place that, you know, like here in Ontario, we have the big forts where a war happened. So there's a battlefield where lots of people died and a war happened. Well, if you're a medium and you kind of tune into it, you can see the battle playing out. Mm-hmm. So, and that happens, like I've seen it. But that's because I'm clairvoyant. So you have to have a little bit of a natural talent in clairvoyance to be able to see stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean with my physical eyes. I mean clairvoyantly I see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I understand what clairvoyance is.
Yeah, I call those cyclical phantasms. And it's almost like a groove got etched into reality and repeats every so many cycles. And there's no, those are the ones you can't really interact with. You just perceive it happening. Is that right?
Yeah, you can't go up to them and ask them a question. It's like they're not there, but you can see what they were doing. You know, a friend's house, she had a house from like the 1820s, and she had a woman sitting at her dining room table. And the woman is sitting there at the dining room table looking out the window, and I could just perfectly describe her dress, what she looks like, what she's thinking, what she's doing, but I could not walk up to her and say, what are you doing here? It's not that kind of a spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen a few of those, and that I think is something that gets etched into reality either because somebody either there was a really traumatic event that had a lot of energy around it, or it was something that somebody did like every day at 5 p.m. One of my shamanic friends lived in an old house, and every day at a certain time, they could see this guy walk from a place in the backyard with a bucket, walk up to the side door of the house, and then disappear and not show up in the house. But every day he would make this path from a place in the backyard and up to the side door. And he asked me about it one time, and you know, if I saw it, and I don't see them visually, but I perceive them mentally. And I said, oh, you mean the guy coming from the well right over there in the backyard? And the backyard was completely flat. And he said, yeah, actually, that's where the old well was. You know, so this recurring phantasm was just tracing a path of getting a bucket of water every night, going up to the house and going inside. And that was all it did. It had no meaning. It was just something that had gotten kind of scratched into reality and just kept recurring on every coil.
Okay, so all right, so Mary, let me see if I understand this correctly. So, and then correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so a spirit can choose to either reincarnate or not, and if it chooses to stay here, it sort of becomes one of these ghosts. But or it could choose to reincarnate. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you get the choice.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
You know, and then I believe also, just to add on to that, I believe you can create what you see in the afterlife. Just like you can in the astral plane, you can create whatever you're going to see. So maybe some of these people, you know, didn't live a good life and they are afraid, you know, that they're going to burn in hell and they're afraid to go through.
Oh, okay, so somebody who dies and then they're sort of afraid to go on because or afraid to sort of release themselves back
Yeah.
into the pool or whatever you want to call it, so they sort of stay here. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay, I could see that. Okay.
And sometimes some of them will cause enough trouble that they have to be dealt with. Or there may be spirits that impersonate people who haven't gone on, and those have to be dealt with. I've done a little bit of that over the years.
You sound so sure of that. I'm wondering what makes you so sure of that.
So sure of what?
The comment you made sounded so sure, like, oh yeah, it happens that way.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what brought you to that conclusion? I know. I always ask these questions. I'm sorry.
You ask good questions.
Yeah, but now Animus is like, fuck.
Making him think.
What kind of a metaphor can I use here? How can I explain this to this dim-witted, non-shamanistic guy?
Well, you're not dim-witted, but you weren't there, or you didn't know the people. So
right, exactly.
I'm trying to respect your skepticism by saying, you know, I tell you these stories, but they're still to you just coming in as stories. I could have made them up. I mean, I'm a decent writer. I really am. I could make these up. But over the course of my life as a practitioner, I've run into situations where I've had to deal with different kinds of spirits or elementals or fae in various ways. And there's been a lot of times where I'm thinking, okay, this isn't really what people think it is. This isn't really the ghost of the person who lived here 100 years ago. This is an imposter spirit who's an asshole, you know, and they had to be dealt with in spiritual or magical ways. But other than telling you every one of the stories, there's no way to prove it. There's no camera footage.
Okay, so you're confident in your experiences, it sounds like.
Yeah, because they had an objective effect on other people's lives, which is all I really care about. You know, It's a healer thing. If the little child is being terrorized by a phantom and I do something that I've done before and the phantom is no longer there and the child is no longer terrorized, to me, that's a win. And I kind of don't care which way the mechanism worked.
Okay. All right. So you're confident in that because it's something that you experienced. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, something I've done that has affected other people's personal experience. If it was just me, it's just trance work. But if it affects someone else somewhere else in a way that that I predicted that it would, or that I hoped that it would, then that's, like I said, that's a win because somebody's life was better in some way. But when it happens without me telling them what's going to happen, that gives me a little more confidence in the theory or a little more confidence in the process, especially if it happens for someone who didn't even know it was supposed to happen.
Okay. And you had mentioned about what was it? Like they kind of take on a persona or impersonate.
Yeah, you know, as of all these spirits or incorporeal beings or whatever they are, you know, there's all kinds of different kinds that you can track through mythology and your own experience. Some of them are assholes, and some of them are tricksters. Some of them will pretend to be somebody else. In my opinion, they're not all who they say they are. Hang on just a second, my throat's messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, one way to frighten a child is to impersonate its grandparent and then be an asshole to the child. You know what I mean? So some of these spirits are assholes. That's just all there is to it. It's just like any other kind of people. Some of them are jerks. And sometimes they can be dealt with, and sometimes they are intolerable and they have to be dealt with severely.
Mm-hmm.
But, God, lost the question.
Well,
So,
that's
yes,
okay.
some of them are
how would-
impersonating other people. So, like graveyard spirits, over the years, I have slowly come to the opinion that when you go out in the graveyard and there's the spirits of the dead in the graveyard, I think there are other spirits for the most part that have come in, kind of like the whites from Tolkien Middle Earth. They came in and sort of inhabited the graves and said, hey, this is a cool place to live. Let's be these people. And then they would use whatever their abilities are to sort of impersonate dead humans, because it's kind of like role playing for them. And I'm not convinced they're the actual person who used to be in that. I think they came in afterwards and started. And I'm not real fond of them, but I have dealt with them.
So it sounds like what you described, that white is it not a human spirit, or is it something else?
In my opinion, I think there's some other category of spirit beings, but they do seem to have a self-concept, or they've chosen to adopt a self-concept, and that they are the actual original person. Because they haven't convinced me of that. I think it's a little bit of an illusion game they play. I think they like emotion, and they like getting other people into their game. They're kind of borderline personalities.
Okay.
I do know that I went to, it's not a cemetery anymore. It's been paved over. We have this big parking lot in the middle of the city that used to be a cemetery, and like a pauper's cemetery. And they paved it over. They didn't move the graves, you know, just like Poltergeist, right? And went on a ghost tour. And during that walk through that parking lot, I just got a really bad feeling come over me, and saw a woman in a Victorian dress walking across the parking lot. And then later on, like, you know, we went to several locations, right? But later on that evening, when I got back home, there was a Victorian woman in my upstairs hallway. And my son even mentioned it. And he's like, he got all freaked out. And this lasted for about a week, maybe 2 weeks. And he got all freaked out. And I said, well, what is it? And he's like, there's this Victorian woman in the hallway upstairs. And she looks like that woman on Sinister. And so, of course, you know, I'm getting all freaked out too, because I knew exactly where it was from, and I didn't tell him.
Followed you home like a lost puppy, huh? Like, they paved over my house. I'll come hang out with you for a while. Yeah, they can do that.
That was the only one that has ever freaked me out, was that one. So yeah.
But was she doing anything? I mean, was she actually? She was just there.
She was just hanging out in the hallway.
Yeah, sure. Why not? It's better than hanging out under a parking lot.
I did feel the hand on my ankle that night. But other than that, I never felt anything other than that. And I didn't, you know, I could have tuned in to try and see who she was, but frankly, she freaked me out. So I didn't really tune into her. And then about 2 weeks later, she disappeared.
She found someone.
She went back home. She went back home. I don't know, but she was gone after that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
You know, these things have their own lives in a way. Then, you know, they just want people to, you know, recognize them, say hi to them. Sometimes that's all they want is a little recognition. They're bored.
Yeah.
And some of them are very fussy about the conditions of the place that they inhabit. I had one indirectly get contact with someone who contacted me, of one who was really upset about the condition of his grave because, you know, it had been, in his opinion, it had been defiled and it needed to be reconsecrated and replanted or whatever. And so, you know, that was as a favor to a friend, I went and did that one morning, part of a much longer tale, but that's the short version. And then he was happy and he didn't complain anymore. And his neighbor didn't complain about him complaining. You know, some of them are fussy about their conditions and some of them are just happy to hang around and just be them, you know, watch television with you. You know?
Well, in their defense, it must get pretty boring not having to eat and not really having to sleep and just being incorporeal and just moving through everything in life or your afterlife for eternity. It must get kind of boring.
That's how it seems to me, honestly. As much as that sounds like a joke, it honestly seems like about the level of frame of mind that some of these entities have. Is they're just wanting to experience. They're like children. They just want to experience, you know, kind of like cats.
Yeah, but in their defense, I mean, it must get really boring, you know, for thousands of years doing this. And then of all the other spirits who are around you, you know, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if it gets crowded too, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, they always make the graves at nice regular intervals so everyone has their own little space. But, you know, sometimes the neighbor is annoying, which is what got me out to a particular graveyard on a particular morning. And in that story is, you know, he was annoying his neighbor and the neighbor was then annoying the forest. And the forest is annoying me. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to go take care of this for your friend, for his friend, you know, and we'll just reconsecrate a grave. And then he'll shut the hell up and stop bugging his neighbors, you know. But, yeah. You know, if nobody goes out to visit the graveyard, what's the point of pretending to be there? What's the point of pretending to be a grave spirit if nobody shows up to pay you homage or whatever? I mean, in China, they go to the graveyards every year. I mean, like for their equivalent of Samhain, they go out and they carefully redress the graves and clean everything and interact with their ancestral spirits very carefully because they, you know, and the Norse had similar ideas. Is you want the grave spirits to not come bug you in the house. You want them to stay in the graveyard. So you got to go out and pay them some attention once in a while and keep up their place. And this is, you know, the essence of confusion.
And again, they're going to be doing that for eternity. So might as well. I mean, now I can understand why spirits would go around and bother other people because what else are you going to do? I mean, it must be boring being a spirit. You don't have to eat. You don't have to sleep. You can't do anything fun. So, yeah, I mean, why not bother people and knock stuff over and freak them out? Makes perfect sense to me.
Honestly, as cynical as that sounds, I think sometimes that's the effective mechanism, is they just want to do something. You know, that's why people want to be buried in interesting ways. You know, put a tree over them, then they can be part of the tree. And they can experience the life of the tree.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that I forget the name of the company, but what they'll do is they'll actually put your ashes into like this little pot with the seed of a tree, and then people can plant that, and then the tree will grow from that, from this little pod that used to be you in there with all this mulch and all this other stuff. Isn't that cool?
That is cool. Maybe then you become the next generation of dryad. Maybe your spirit combines with the spirit of the growing tree, and maybe you live the life of a tree. That's a very animistic / shamanic thought. You know, that kind of thing has been done by certain cultures for exactly that reason. We want them to become part of a tree because then they'll be part of the mind of the forest.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I don't know how much it is, but that would be fun to do. So, all right. Well, this was a lot of fun. I know I started late. We started at like 6:45 or so, but it's 8 o'clock now. My apologies for being late. YouTube changed its format, and it took me a long time to figure out how to actually do a live stream.
Oh.
So I had to revert it back to the old one. There's a way to do that. So And
Oh, I haven't looked into it. I didn't know they had changed it.
yeah, the layout looks a little different if you're on a computer. At least my layout. I don't know. Maybe they just changed mine.
No, they messed around with it again, and it's a little more awkward than it was before. Just like every time Google Plus sticks their fingers into YouTube, they make it a little screwier. Like I said, Emma Blackery said it best. My thoughts on Google Plus by Emma Blackery will make the whole last 5 years make sense.
And I did actually, Animus, I actually did watch that link, that TEDx talk that you had sent. That lady.
Yeah, Martha Beck. Yeah. So maybe that may make some of the differences in the way we think make a little sense, because to some extent we're running on just slightly different ways of filtering reality, and that's why sometimes the words get messy. But I thought it was.
But she didn't seem to be talking about different forms of magic.
No, she was. Yeah, she had cobbled together kind of a similar personal experience taken from a lot of different traditions, which is why I think it's so cool, because it doesn't matter if you've studied which culture you've been a part of, is you can find a little similarity in there.
Mm-hmm.
And and all of her, the fact that clearly a lot of other scientists are in this realm of thought about how like the right brain works and connectivity, but they're basically proving magic is what they're basically doing bit by bit. And
well, yeah, because I only watched like maybe half of it, so I'll have to finish it up. But,
yeah,
all right.
Nice
yeah, it looks like it. All right. Well, thank you both, Mary. I'm so glad you could join us, and Animus is always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we'll have to think up a topic for next week. I don't know if either of you have a topic, or if we want to just think of one off the bat on the day of.
Whatever's good for you.
Okay.
Well, you probably didn't know what you were getting into with spirits with me, did you?
Oh, not really. I mean, no offense, Animus, but I mean, if I can follow along Animus with his many analogies and comparisons and allegories, yours is easy, Mary.
No, I'm definitely a lot more alien. I'm definitely a lot more alien, so the translation is a lot more tricky.
Yeah, and it's also a concept which is very difficult to. I mean, it's all conceptual, I mean, it's really difficult to kind of, it's a very subjective topic. You know what I mean? It's very there's a lot there, and it's really difficult to kind of hammer stuff down. So you end up having to ask a lot of questions like, "Oh, what do you mean by that? What is that? How do you describe?"
Yeah, and any one of us doesn't know which of the terms suddenly don't make sense to somebody else because we've been using it for so long that way. It's like, what do you mean that doesn't mean that to you? How could that not mean that to you?
Exactly.
And I learned this, like in my stuff, I learned this stuff in the beginning by walking around in the woods and the wilderness and sailing on lakes with my family. And so to me, it was direct experience. Nobody tried to describe it, like, here, sailing into a thunderstorm. What do you think? That doesn't translate well into English.
All right.
A lot of, I don't know if you've watched her, but a lot of what you were talking about, Animus, Dolores Cannon goes over quite a bit of that. There's some old speeches of hers on YouTube. She's written many books, but what she was, I found her fascinating. She's not a psychic or anything like that. She was a hypnotist, and she would hypnotize people to find out about past lives.
Mm-hmm.
And she figured out that, once you go deep, deep, deep into meditation, some really strange things would appear. Like they'd start telling you strange stuff. And so she just started like compiling information from all these different clients and putting together stories from it. So she's fascinating to watch.
So she got all the way down to the information from the netherworlds and the alternate dimensions and the non-human
Yes.
lives. Yeah. See, my father was also trained in hypnotherapy and was a leader in hypnotherapists in the Southeast United States. And he talked about the same thing. You get down deep enough and you start getting into people's lives where they weren't even human. They weren't even on this planet. And they're coming up with stuff that the host would have no way to know. Like some housewife starts talking about, something completely off the wall that she would never think up on her own, but it's completely coherent within its own storyline. And they come out of it and they have no idea what they said.
All right, I'm gonna have to end this, but it sounds like a good conversation. So
yeah, states of mind. Yeah, let's talk about more states of mind later.
Sounds good. All right, thank you so much. Thanks, chat. Have a good night. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good to talk to you, Mary. Thanks, everybody.
Good to see you.